Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. Going to talk with somebody again today who provides a lot of insight on our future. I'm going to say that, our future, and our children, our future. And he supports them, having worked in a school district in California for many years as a school psychologist. And it's one of those occupations that you don't think of until you need to think of it. Let's say you have a child having some challenges. And even as I talk now, I think back, I had a psychologist many, many, many years ago. And I remember it vividly, and it was very impactful for challenges that I was going through. We're going to look at what he has done through the eyes of somebody in that career path. And we've got a lot of feedback last time we had him on. This is Good Advice Helps with Dr. Allan Gold, and he's back with us. How are you doing today?
Yes. Hi. How are you? I'm fine. Thank you.
Doing well. Doing great. And, you know, we fielded some emails last time we get together. By the way, if you want to reach out, instant feedback, steve@gmail.com, from some looking at psychology and even specifically school psychologist as a career path. And I want to dig back into that and, you know, the education involved. But before we even go there, one thing centers on my mind, and that is when you're working with children, all those years, Allan, how did you navigate that? Because it can get, for you, hearing their challenges, their school, their home situations, their school situations, and all of that, it can take a lot from you. It can be very heavy on you. How did you continue to navigate and not, you know, for lack of a better description, not let it get to you?
Well, that's a very good question, and it is it's a rather long process. I think when one starts the career and one has emotional fragility, I think it's very easy to over-identify, over-empathize with students, and you can be, you know, pretty severely affected. But it takes a while. Some people a little bit longer, some people a little bit shorter, to maintain that balance of empathy and understanding and really wanting to help somebody without taking it entirely on yourself. I mean, that may sound a little vague or confusing. I mean, even after almost 50 years of work, sometimes I would be talking to a student and get teary myself. It all depends what hits you, you know, and if you can relate to some of what a child is going through. That's where you're probably most vulnerable. If you went through something that a child is going through when you were a child, whether it might be abuse or learning problems, you're probably more vulnerable. But I think it helps a lot to be able to say, okay, this is that child. I understand this, but I'm not going to fall. I need to keep my intellectual side going so I can figure out how to support this child in a way not to be totally taken in by what the child is going through. And I've always recommended to my interns and to other psychologists, get your own therapy. It is so important to do that. My entire career, I still have my own personal therapist. And when I was working, I would spend, you know, a third to half of I won't say every session, but at least part of a session talking about work issues. And if I had some emotional difficulty dealing with a particular student, I would talk about it and try to figure out myself what to, you know, how to handle that. And it may not just be over-empathizing with somebody. It may be your own feelings of, I won't say incompetence, but inability to make a positive effect. for example, I've had some kids that just didn't want to talk, and it was very, very frustrating. And so then either you're over-identifying with the kid, and you need to deal with those emotional responses, or you are, as a professional, stuck because you're not making any progress, or you're not being able to connect with the student effectively. So that's why I strongly, strongly recommend your own personal therapy. And it doesn't matter how old you are, there's always something personal to discuss and deal with. But when it comes to work, there are always work issues, too, that come up.
It's amazing or gratifying to feel nowadays we can say, yeah, I have a therapist. Hey, I'll catch up with you later. I'm going to see my therapist. Back in the day, call it 20, 30 years ago, people would look at you a little odd. Oh, somebody's got a little problem there. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't even say the two words, mental health, back then.
Yes.
Yeah. Now it's common to say, yeah, I'm working on my mental health and my physical health as well. Did you find, Allan, through those years that in the beginning it was challenging not to internalize what a child is feeling and going through, and then I guess maybe developed a filter, a thicker skin maybe, so that it didn't penetrate your core all the time, and you were able to focus on helping the child?
Yeah, I think I was pretty successful at that. I sort of call it an armor. You don't want to be totally impenetrable so that you don't feel anything. So, but it's sort of a excuse me, a light armor. I would describe it, so that you're not totally impacted by what everybody says. And the fact of your intellectual, not just emotional, but your intellectual work is so important, because you need to keep thinking, okay, so I need to learn more about the situation. I need to try to figure out a possible solution. How am I going to communicate that to this student, and so on. So, but it does take just exactly what you're saying. Whether it's a filter or armor, however you describe it. And I that's very important to develop. And I think personally I was able to do that. It didn't seem to be, years and years, decades for me to do that. I was able to do that fairly easily. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean I didn't care about kids, because
Sure.
I really did care about them, and still do. But I didn't fall apart when I heard something that was, very, very concerning.
Yeah, that must be the thing too, that you must have heard it all. Yeah, in decades of doing this work, so many different stories, so many different challenges. The stories of children, what their home life is like, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I used to do groups for children of divorce or separation, so I would hear all kinds of things. I mean, excuse me. I've heard kids, even young kids, dealing with alcoholic parents, violent parents. Probably the only thing I didn't hear a lot of was maybe because I worked in a high socioeconomic district, but I didn't hear a lot of effects of poverty. But there were indeed kids who, compared to most of the population, really didn't have much financial support or accessibility. So, and I've dealt with
many of
children whose parents have died. That's horrible. Those are some of the hardest ones. Divorce I got used to, but when a child loses a parent, that's probably one of the worst things.
Oof, I never even considered that.
Oh yeah. I did a group once for some middle school kids, all of whom, there were about 4 or 5 of them, they all had a parent with cancer. And at least one of their parents passed away. So, and it's interesting, too, just learning about which kids. I've had a couple of families in the last 5 years or so. 2 siblings lost, each of the 2 different families lost a parent. One of the siblings was more than eager to talk to me. The other one, not at all. One was a boy and one was a girl that would talk or that wouldn't talk. So, you want to be there for the people, but
sure,
you don't know who's actually going to be willing to talk about their losses.
I do believe we have a call. Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can.
This is Josh. Hi, it's Josh from Ohio State. I was just listening in to all the stories, and seeing my mom also. It's very inspirational. Hearing the stories with the kids. Do you know if it was hard to gain the trust in a child?
Pardon me, say that again. Was it hard to do what? Oh, get the
gain
trust?
The trust.
That is a super wonderful question. All kids are different, but the process for a school psychologist to connect to kids is probably the most important.
Right.
Kids are often referred to a school psychologist by a parent or a teacher. Those are the trickier ones. When kids get older and they maybe are familiar with you, or even not so old. I had kids in 3rd grade who would write me little Post-it notes because they wanted to talk to me about something. But my strategy for doing that is to really show interest in them before you deal with their behavioral, social, or academic issues. Ask questions about them to get to know them, because when kids I understand that you are interested in them, that begins to build trust. Ask them about their interests and games. I always let kids draw if they like to draw. I played games with them. I would talk about what makes you laugh. What's funny. You can even be silly if it's appropriate. There's a silly side of me, and getting kids to laugh really. They see that you're a normal human being. Sharing your own experiences with them that may be relevant, I think, is very important. Like I would have kids come to me who would be teased because they were short. And when I was a kid, I was very short too, and I knew exactly what that felt like.
Me too.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I finally grew, but but if it's important for other kids, who are dealing with sexual identity or sexual orientation, I could share my own experiences around sexual orientation. I like to appear in classes or go out at recess and just associate with kids so that they could see that, I was a human being. One other thing that's extremely important is to be complimentary of kids, because if you think about what it's like to be a kid, who do you get? You get criticized all the time. You get criticized by your parents, you get criticized by your teachers, and all adults are telling you what you did wrong and try to correct this. So I think, I know that for kids to receive a compliment, they may not burst into a smile, but it means a lot to them to hear positive things about themselves.
Sure.
And it's different for teachers who are disciplining kids, and, there are ways to do that. The teachers can actually, get to know each kid as personally as much as possible, correct them quietly, compliment them, moderate their discipline, and so on. But I think for a school psychologist, we have a wonderful opportunity to actually get to know kids. And then once they have that trust, then we can begin to work on the behavioral and social issues or the academic issues. I hope that
I think that answers it beautifully, and you bring up some other things that we don't consider. In that role, Allan, you have to be plugged in to what's going on. You know, be it video games, Minecraft.
Oh, yes.
It has to be on your radar because you need to relate to, those kids. And funny, you said before, encourage them to draw. I remember I must have been in the 4th grade, and I went to the school psychologist. I could even tell you where the office was located in the hallway in my elementary school. I remembered that vividly, but not until we start talking about it right now. And that psychologist encouraged me to draw. I was very much into cartooning back then. I still remember what I drew. I drew some army men parachuting out of a plane. I don't know. I thought it was cool back then.
Yeah.
But I remember it. It made a mark on me, and it helped understand, some of the challenges I was going through. I was you were the short kid. I was the fat kid. I got bullied, But
Okay.
It comes along with the territory of being specifically even an elementary school student. Is there anything that you may have done differently to relate to students over the years? Is there anything?
Yeah, I think this was a learning process. I was probably much more serious and I won't say distant, but there was more of a boundary in my younger years as a school psychologist. So I think it wasn't like an automatic transition, but I think I just learned over the years. And that's one thing about the profession. You never stop learning. There's always going to be some new issue that comes up. I remember 5 or 6 years ago, I dealt with my first transgender student. And it took a while it took almost 2 years for the student to actually come and approach me. I heard about him in 4th grade, and then he actually came to me in 6th grade, and we formed a wonderful relationship after that. So you just have to, you have to develop, what works for you in making those contacts.
And you're reading my mind, because I was going to even say that. You could take a bazillion courses. You could read everything there is to know about the field, but you are different than somebody else. And you have your own internal superpowers that relate to others, i.e. children, that I guess you need to craft them. You need to pull them out because you're going to relate to them in a way that others won't. You shared with us previously that you've been part of school plays and productions.
Yeah.
Right. Another way to relate. Got an email, this one coming from Ocala, Florida, and this is Mike. He says, I'm looking at psychology as a major. Did you plan to major in that and eventually move over to school psychology?
That person doesn't know my story, which I will say quickly. No, I was a math major. I was getting a PhD in statistics, but it was right in the middle of the Vietnam War, and I had to decide whether to go to jail, go to Canada, get drafted and killed, or join the Army Reserve, which I did in 1969. I ended up in a hospital unit. I was trained as a psychology social work specialist there, which I had no idea even existed in the Army. And then I went back to work for Blue Shield. I was going to be an actuary, but on a random conversation coming back from a summer camp, I was talking to a fellow person in my company, and he was in a counseling and school psychology program at Stanford, and I'd never even heard of it before, but it struck me, and so I thought about, and I hadn't even had a psych course as an undergraduate at University of California, Berkeley, so I did a lot of thinking. I switched back to undergraduate psychology courses for a year, but it was the school psychology that really appealed to me because I'd always been interested in education. I was going to be like a statistics professor. So it appealed to that part of me that wanted to teach and help others. So once I had, and I loved the psychology courses, so it was the right decision for me to make. But that story is, I don't know if it's unique, but it says, you never know quite what life is going to present you that might change your whole path.
I totally relate to that, and thank you for sharing that. And you shared a piece of it last time we got together. When I was like 22, my dad, actually 21, my dad had passed, got a couple of bucks, bought some video equipment, taught myself video production, eventually sold the equipment so years later, and had always been interested in graphics and art and things like that. Fast forward decades later, I opened a marketing company, and all that stuff that I learned back in the day that I thought, I'll never use that, I was able to use it.
Good.
Like you say, you never know the path that life is going to take you. You do what you love, and obviously you've done this for a long time. It is your purpose and your passion. Could you ever think of doing anything else?
Once I had this profession, I really didn't think of, people have asked me that, now that you're retired, do you want to do something else? I don't think I want another profession. It was so satisfying. And I still want to help people. I'm still in contact with a number of my former students who are now adults, and they rely on me for advice. And so being that helping person, and I wanted to do that from the time I was even in first grade. If somebody was having trouble reading, I wanted to help them. So, being in a helping profession is so rewarding. So I don't particularly want to do anything else.
Well, how interesting when we look at it this way. You helped Josh today, Mike today, and countless others in terms of career path, and so many other parents, I'm sure.
I hope I did.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you did. And so many parents that now realize that the impact that a psychologist can make in a school on a student to help move their school year forward.
Yeah.
Again,
and it's so much more necessary now
Yeah.
with what young people are going through.
Oh.
The stress, the anxiety, all the social media issues. It's very hard being a kid these days.
Oh my gosh! Even just to know, as a student, it doesn't matter what grade you're in, to know that you have a safe place. Even
Yes.
to have a psychologist say, one that knows that a student is going through some challenges. Hey, if you ever need some time, just want to come down, just want to sit in the chair and just get a moment. Maybe you need to isolate from some students. You got things going on. Just to know you have a place to go, I believe, is half of it. And then
Right.
somebody like you shows up and is able to relate and understand.
And if you can somehow teach a student or develop resilience, that is so important because the suicidal rate is higher now. People just give up, and to understand and to listen to an older person who's been through a lot of stuff, and I have, just to know that yes, I can get through this.
Yeah.
I had lots of strategies. I talked to kids about history banks, and when they were old enough to remember their past, and they could use that as a reference to say, yeah, I had a really hard time when I was 8 years old, but I got through it, rather than giving up.
Love it. Allan, thank you so much for today, all the insight. Truly appreciate it, and definitely looking forward next time we get together.
Okay, thanks so much, and thanks to the young people who asked me those questions.
And again, moving forward, instant feedback, steve@gmail.com. You have any question related to the field, please send it to us, and we'll definitely work on it next time we get together. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.